Welcome to Ed Leader with your host, Dr. Rob Jackson. Educational leadership is an ever-evolving opportunity to make a real and lasting difference in the lives of students, parents, and the community. And now, here's your host, Dr. Rob Jackson.
Hi friends, welcome to the Ed Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Jackson, and I want to thank you for spending time with me today. I hope that the podcast is adding value to you and your work. It has been and is my attempt to give back to the profession that has given so much to me. It's not sponsored and there are no commercials. It is simply, I hope, an opportunity to learn from and with other leaders as each of us seek to grow as leaders. If you have not, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast on your podcast player and share it with your network of colleagues and friends. The Ed Leader podcast community continues to grow worldwide because of your kind words and positive ratings. Remember, you can find show notes, links to references that are cited during each episode, and find each of the previous regular episodes and the 3 special leadership series at drrobjackson.com. Speaking of continuing to grow, let's get to it. Chris Hadfield, a Canadian astronaut, describes leadership this way. Ultimately, he says, leadership is not about glorious crowning acts. It's about keeping your team focused on a goal and motivated to do their best to achieve it, especially when the stakes are high and the consequences really matter. It's about laying the groundwork for others' success and then standing back and letting them shine. That quote really seems to capture the heart of Coast Guard Captain Jennifer Stockwell, Sector Commander of Coast Guard Sector Virginia. I don't know of many stakes higher than a person's life when their boat is capsized, or of consequences any more intense than when preparing for the impact of a hurricane. Yet the groundwork she puts in place helps to ensure that the team she leads is ready to respond in those big, stressful moments. Captain Jennifer Stockwell assumed duties as Commander, Sector Virginia in June 2022 after serving 2 years as Deputy Commander. As Sector Commander, she leads 1,200 Coast Guardsmen and auxiliary personnel among 3 cutters, 6 small boat stations, 3 aids to navigation teams, and a sector field office conducting all Coast Guard missions in Virginia waters and offshore. Her official authorities include Captain of the Port, Officer in charge of Marine Inspection, Federal On-Scene Coordinator, Federal Maritime Security Coordinator, and Search and Rescue Mission Coordinator. Captain Stockwell is a 1998 graduate of the U.S. Coast Guard Academy with a Bachelor of Science in Marine and Environmental Sciences and earned a Master of Science in Chemical Engineering in 2002 from the Johns Hopkins University. She has responded to numerous major incidents, including Hurricane Gustav, Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Rita, and Deepwater Horizon. Captain Stockwell is married to a retired Coast Guard officer and the proud mother of 4 children. Please help me welcome Captain Jennifer Stockwell to the Ed Leader Podcast. Captain Stockwell, what an absolute delight to have opportunity to spend some time with you. First of all, I want to say thank you for your service and your leadership and all that you do for so many. But I also want to thank you for allowing us to learn with and from you in this moment. Welcome to the Ed Leader Podcast.
Well, thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Absolutely. I received the announcement that you had become the sector commander for Coast Guard Sector Virginia. Now, I just said a lot of words together that quite a few of our listeners may not have any idea what that means. So let's kind of start with you sharing with us what is Coast Guard Sector Virginia, and we'll kind of go from there.
Of course. So Coast Guard Sector Virginia is a term of our organization, and I oversee all the Coast Guard operations within the Commonwealth of Virginia from a shoreside and waterborne. So think search and rescue, law enforcement, vessel inspections, and aids to navigation. Everything within the Commonwealth of Virginia out to 200 miles that organizational structure is called a sector. And I have counterparts all over the United States that we divide the area up. So, to the north and to the south, I have sector North Carolina to the south of me, and then sector Maryland, National Capital Region to the north.
Excellent. Well, and so first of all, that's a lot of land, a lot of ocean, a lot of people, a lot of vessels, a lot of responsibility. So I can only imagine how that must hit you the night before you were about to assume command. And I believe you relieved Captain Stevens. Share with us a little bit about your journey in terms of choosing a career in the Coast Guard and what kind of brought you to this opportunity.
Yeah, of course. So I started out, I'd say, accidentally. I joined the Coast Guard. I went to the Coast Guard Academy. I was looking for a way to go to college and get an education as well as start a career. I didn't honestly believe when I went to the Coast Guard Academy that I would be in for more than 5 years, which was my obligation. And here I stand 22 years later. So quite say atypical, but I also think it's fairly typical with folks in the Coast Guard as well. I went to the Coast Guard Academy, which is a service academy, just like the other service academies, West Point or Annapolis, all the service academies have them. And then I was commissioned in the Coast Guard as an ensign, and then started my career from there. And for sectors, our operations are fairly focused on what we call prevention or response. Prevention is very heavily focused into vessel inspections, investigations, like National Transportation Safety Board. We're the counterpart in the maritime, as well as ACE navigation and waterways management. So that was the emphasis of my career. I started off pretty early in my career, focusing on those sorts of sector operations, doing vessel inspections. It's great. Every day it's different. As technology changes, our job requires to change. Seeing quite a big change over the last 20 years in kind of port operations, as well as technology, which has been really fun. So I have had the opportunity to work in Corpus Christi, Texas, in Providence, Rhode Island. I've been here in Sector Virginia twice and out in San Francisco, California. So kind of all over the country, seeing operations from different ports, but it's all kind of coalesced together to kind of lead me to where I stand today.
Absolutely amazing. All I'm thinking as you're sharing that is what an incredible adventure and what an incredible opportunity to see lots of different places across the country and around the country. And then, of course, to work with lots of great folks. Listeners to our podcast may recall that here in Carteret County, we're on the coast of North Carolina. And unfortunately, we had a tragedy with a small plane crash last spring. And the Coast Guard was absolutely amazing in their response that started off as search and rescue and became recovery. And so, especially in our coastal counties, and it should be the case across the country, but especially in our coastal counties, we're just so very appreciative of the role of the Coast Guard and all that you and your colleagues do in keeping folks safe and keeping all of us safe in terms of making sure some things aren't showing up on our shores that we wouldn't want to be there. And so we certainly appreciate that. We have in our school system a wonderful assistant principal who's also a reservist, a reserve officer in the Coast Guard. And he shared with me, following your assumption of as sector commander, your command philosophy. And when he shared it with me, I went, oh my goodness, I printed it out. It was started out as an email and highlighted some things. And then I said, I absolutely need to speak to Captain Stockwell. And so again, I'm delighted to have this opportunity. And so at the very top, and I will, with your permission, Captain Stockwell, link this in our show notes in the podcast, but at the very top, in bold letters, in italics, underlined, so clearly a point of emphasis, it says, people first, the rest will follow. Share with us why it was so important to really highlight that. It's the 3-paragraph command philosophy, but the top, in bold, in italics, underlined, people first, the rest will follow.
I've always found that if you invest in your people and you invest in those around you, the work's going to get done, and it's going to get done better than if you put an emphasis on the job. So if you take care of the people, if you work on to ensure that they have a safe place to be their best, because not everyone is the same, which is, that diversity piece is extraordinarily important no matter what sort of organization you have. It's how we think, how we work, how we integrate. I find if we take care of our people, everything else is going to follow right behind. I mean, just like teaching tomorrow's leaders, we have a very important job too. While our mission is important, if we can't do our mission without people. So if I take care of my people, they're gonna do the rest. It really is that simple. And that happened to me throughout my career. I found that I always excelled in places where I wanted to do better because people around me cared. I found that environment of learning and performance was, we always tend to do better in a group setting where everyone enjoys their job as well as feels empowered and trusted. So that's kind of where that all came from. I actually stole it from a Marine Corps colonel. He actually said, "People first, the mission will follow." So I think it's interesting how most of us in the military kind of steal shamelessly, but again, to me, it really is starting with our people, and once we take care of them, we're going to get the job done.
There's no question, and of course, as we stay in education, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So we steal and borrow and imitate all the time, and I think that's probably a good way to approach things, because great ideas are great ideas and they shouldn't be left in silos or hidden away. And so we do that as well. In your command philosophy, and I absolutely love it start to finish because there's so much here. And so I'd like to unpack it a little bit. You start by sharing, only when we support our members through personal and professional challenges, stand with their families, and sustain a highly professional work environment, will we be able to attract and retain the workforce for today and tomorrow. We in education, particularly here in North Carolina, have struggled with finding and recruiting enough teachers and teacher assistants and all the various employee opportunities in our organization. And so we're really thinking about retention. And you kind of right off the bat say, we've got to do these things if we want to attract and retain the workforce. And so what does it look like to support the members through personal and professional challenges and stand with their families and sustain this highly professional work environment? What are you expecting from the folks you work with?
What it comes down for me is that everyone's needs are a little bit different. And when we're talking about understanding the needs of the workforce, it can be very simple. It can be, hey, my daycare doesn't open until 8:00. Do you mind if I don't come into work till 8:30? Or it can be, I'm working on my master's degree. I need Wednesday nights off so that I can facilitate that process. Or, it can be an extreme, like my mother is in hospice. Is there a way that we can move temporarily or permanently so I can take care of a parent? So I think there's a lot of that when we talk about, supporting members through their personal and professional challenges, because we need to understand and adapt to our workforce's needs. We have to be flexible. We've seen that over the last few years where, especially through COVID, it's made us, I think, need to be more resilient and adaptable to the challenges that our workforce is placed. And as we see a lot more, especially in the military, a lot more women coming in, a lot more family dynamics, we need to make sure that we can adapt. So, because that's where our talent lies, is understanding that 9 to 5 or whatever your framework is doesn't meet everyone's needs. Throughout their work time, and especially when there's personal crisis, that we are seeing as well an uptick of personnel with suicidal ideations, which is very concerning. So we're also getting after that and making sure that their personal needs are met, and we're catching it earlier so that our members don't become in crisis, or their family members don't come in crisis. So we're adapting, to our workforce to address their needs.
That's so important, and everything you're sharing just absolutely resonates with me in our work, I think as leaders, there's just no way we can operate in 2022 as if it were 1950 or 1975 or even 2000, because life has changed, and particularly on the heels of the pandemic and the challenges families face throughout that resiliency piece and that support piece is just absolutely critical and crucial. And I very much appreciate that. You share training, qualification, proficiency, mentorship, and experience are fundamental to success for us all. As you think about the organization, how does that play out where you're saying the training and qualification, proficiency, mentorship of a member of the Coast Guard really impacts the entire command? How does that play out in your organization?
We're very rigid, as you can imagine, in the military. So we have qualification processes for almost every position that we hold. So we think about the basic radio watch standard. You're a boater on the water, you call into the Coast Guard for help. The person that answers on the other line has a training and qualification process. So, and when we talk about the training and qualification, it's a standardized process, but it also it needs to be adaptable for how our technology in our nation is changing, as well as how people are receiving information. As you know, as an educator, kids can learn differently, and we also find that as well. So when we talk about training and qualification, we're talking about a very formal system by which a person goes through a training. They have sign-offs, requirements on different things they need to accomplish, knowledge they need to know, and then they become qualified in that position to then exercise it generally alone. And there is a difference between qualification and being proficient. So I can be qualified at a job and I can be proficient. Think of it as a driver's license. When you first are given your driver's license as a 16-year-old, you're not going to be racing in NASCAR. Those are proficient drivers, but when you become qualified to drive, it is very different, and it is a longer process through a lot of mentorship where you become much more proficient in your job. So where you can then adapt to those different situations that then arise. So that's where I talk about training, qualification, and proficiency, it really is a continuum of kind of learning. And through it all, there really needs to be good mentorship, good coaching, and a good framework by which everyone understands the expectations for that position that they're placed in.
I tell you, it's interesting to me to hear you refer to mentorship. And so in my thoughts about the military, I visualize someone giving an order and the other person snapping to and fulfilling that order. I don't think mentorship and kind of bringing somebody along. And so I love that because that certainly resonates with me, but I don't know, and maybe you can disabuse me of my notion, but I don't know that mentorship and the military have always been equated or a part of that. And maybe it always has. And I'm not correct in my thinking, but it seems to me that it's very, very important, but not something I would expect.
I suppose it's a little bit. I think it's always been here. But it's different than giving an order. So it's just like you like, I need you to do this following task. We have the same thing. We give an order, we expect it done. But mentoring is really different. It's taking someone junior and really developing them into the next step, or developing them to be the fullest self they can be. So I think there's a difference between having an order and then mentoring. When I talk about mentoring here, I'm talking about our junior members, having them have the confidence to step into those more challenging roles, but providing those the opportunities and sort of training wheels to where they can feel like they can safely go into that space. So, okay, I can talk about this with who's someone who is safe with me. They can come up with challenges. Hey, I don't know how to handle this particular situation. So they have a mentor they can go to talk about how they would handle a particular situation. But it is different than following orders.
I absolutely love that. In my own background, I spent 3 years out of high school in the Navy. So I have just a taste of the military, just enough to go, I'm glad I served. It was a good thing for me, but maybe I need to try something else. So I really do, though, appreciate that thought of, especially as we think back to what you were talking about, retention. If my whole world is following orders, following orders, following orders. I don't know if I stay in that forever, but if my world also consists of someone who clearly cares about me and is helping me grow into the next role, then I'm ready to run through the wall for that person. And so I think there's an incredibly important piece to that mentorship. Now, the next line of your command philosophy is highlighted and has a star next to it on my sheet. So I absolutely love this. And we have a larger font size for a couple of words, and it's underlined again. And so clearly something important to you. And so it says, we will trust and empower all members to safely execute mission, drive innovation, and take warranted risk. Talk to me about your clearly strong beliefs in trust and empowering members, you've highlighted it or you've underlined it, and it's in bold. So talk to me about that. What that equates to in your thinking in terms of around trusting and empowering all members.
I think that's why I'm still here in the Coast Guard today, is because I had a leader when I was very junior that trusted me probably more than I trusted myself. So it was such a empowering feeling. I was standing in front of my captain at the time as a lieutenant junior grade and providing my recommendation on the way forward. And he goes, well, Jen, that's not exactly how I would do it, but go ahead. And just that trust that he had in me was really empowering and helped drive me forward. So, and that's that feeling of trust and empowerment, I really do think is an internal motivator for our workforce. If they lack that, like trust, if people don't feel like their bosses trust them and they need to wait for orders, then you lose so much innovation. You lose so much ability to, I think you also lose bandwidth. So you lose capacity out of your workforce if you don't empower them or trust them to take, make decisions. So that's really where it comes from. And when I talk about warranted risks, at least in the Coast Guard, we can't make our jobs risk-free. And there are times where we may need to put our assets into a risky situation for a better outcome to save a life. So that's where, when I talk about warranted risk, that's where that comes from. It talks about there are times where we may need to, disable our vessel to save a life. So those are the warranted risks we want our members to take. There's always a time where a risk will outweigh, the risk will be enough to outweigh the benefit. Does that make sense? So it'll be the cost benefit analysis. So.
Absolutely. If it comes to saving a life, we can replace a piece of equipment. We can't replace that life. And so I absolutely love that. In fact, you go on to say, tomorrow's leaders must be given leadership opportunities today. And so for us, that's really giving teachers the opportunity to be leaders in the school building and make decisions and really be a part of that. And our high school students to be a part of our school leadership team. So they also have that opportunity. You go on, and it's interesting to me to talk about mistakes. And I appreciate that right up front, you own that mistakes will occur. In fact, you say that mistakes will occur, and then go on to talk about how we handle those in terms of being open and honest, following mistakes, and then learning from them. But then you clearly say, but mistakes that are inconsistent with the Coast Guard's core values will not be tolerated. So I'd love to hear some of your thinking around mistakes. First of all, you recognize them. You see some value in mistakes, but then you're really clear on there are things that we're not going to accept.
Yeah, so I think everyone makes mistakes. Everyone does. And, there's a lot of value in making mistakes because generally you learn more from a mistake than you do from being told don't do that. It's all how you own up to a mistake. And I think also it's the thought process behind it. It's like, why did you do that? And if you can kind of think through it and being open and honest and learning from it, that's the value of it. You're also, if you have an environment whereas your workforce is afraid to make mistakes, then they're not going to be innovative, and they're not going to be bold, and they're not going to be passionate because they're going to be afraid that they're going to be held accountable for stepping outside, the norm, especially in the military. So I think we want to, we're not encouraging everyone to go out there and make mistakes, but if they do occur, then we need to be open and honest. Well, our Coast Guard core values is honor, respect, and devotion to duty. So when I say mistakes that are inconsistent with our core values, I see our Coast Guard core values much like an umbrella. And if you're within the core value umbrella of honor, respect, and devotion to duty, you're fine. But when you step outside that, when you treat people disrespectfully, when you're derelict in your duty, when you're just have no respect for your workplace or the resources that were given, those are inconsistent with our core values. We don't want bad leaders. We don't want people to be treated disrespectfully in the Coast Guard, and that's what we're talking about, or I'm talking about, is that will not be tolerated. We're not going to have an environment where people are going to be disrespected.
I absolutely love that. And just from your command philosophy in our conversation, I understand clearly why you're in charge of Coast Guard Sector Virginia, Captain Stockwell. Well, one more question, and we'll kind of start to bring our conversation to a close. As you kind of wrap up your command philosophy, you note that all members will be asked to surge to meet operational demands and adapt to stressful situations. But then say, but we must keep our assets, skills, and personnel safe, strong, and always ready. And I think you're absolutely right. Whether it's a pandemic or anything else, sometimes we have stressful situations and we recognize that. And we know we've got to be able to meet those moments. But the way we meet those moments is by thinking about our people.
No, that's right. So for us, very kin to you in North Carolina, we have to be ready to respond to hurricanes. So when we talk about our resilience and ability to respond to events, those are the type of events we're looking for. It's like running. You can't run a marathon at a sprinter's pace. You just can't. Well, most of us can't, right? You have to maintain a pace that you can hold, but at times you could sprint. So those hurricane events, I need my team ready. I need them resilient to deal with that. And just like everyone else, whether in education or anywhere, there could be a building fire. There could be an extreme search and rescue case. There could, lots of events that are going to happen that we need to surge for and adapt to. So I need to give my people the ability to recover, re-energize, take vacation, connect with family and friends. That is all important too, to make sure that we're building resiliency in our workforce. So if our workforce is not resilient, then they're going to be fragile and they're not going to be able to handle these large scale events. No question. Captain Stockwell, again, congratulations on being selected as the sector commander for Coast Guard Sector Virginia. I know from your biography that you also have another role that you I'm sure would say is even more important in your life, and that is as mom. And so as we are right here on the cusp of a brand new school year, I wonder, with your twin roles as mother and leader in the Coast Guard, if you might have a message for educators as we start our school year from your experience from the multiple roles that you have. Oh, gosh. Yeah. So I'm a proud mom of 4 beautiful kids, and I cannot thank you, wonderful educators, enough for, especially the last few years, being able to adapt and overcome and just love our kids. I have seen such grace over the last couple of years and the ability to adapt. I have the utmost respect for our educators out there each and every day. So thank you for your service to our community and to our children, because really that what our future holds is where they walk through your doors. So thank you so much. Absolutely. And thank you, Captain Stockwell, and to all of the members of the Coast Guard and those you serve with. We again appreciate your service and all that you do to keep all of us safe. And again, I want to say thank you to you for spending time with us on the Ed Leader Podcast. Thank you so much. I hope that you enjoyed our time together with Captain Stockwell. As she says, people first, the rest will follow. I'm interested in your thoughts as well. Please keep sharing your feedback on Twitter at Dr._Rob_Jackson, through email, or by commenting directly on the show notes page. If you think it's been helpful, please share the episode and podcast with your network of friends and colleagues. Thank you for spending time with me today, and thank you for all that you do for every student, every teacher, and every staff member. You are making a difference. If no one else has told you, I want you to know that I believe in you. Good day.
Thank you for listening to the Ed Leader Podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and consider leaving a review with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts so that we may continue to grow the Ed Leader community. We hope that you have enjoyed your time with Dr. Jackson. Until next time.